actually is the lead play in our offense.
We ask our YN or a tight end to open up somewhere between 6 feet and 9 feet, get an isolation with the linebacker. We tell the tackle to take the defensive end if he's over him. If he's not, to drive down on the first man to his inside. If the YN has the linebacker taken out, he cuts inside. If the YN has the linebacker in, he comes all the way around. If you look at this play, what we're trying to get is a seal here and a seal here. Try to run this play in the alley.
Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome into Packers Total Access. My name is Clayton. You can check us out on Packernet.com. You can find me on Twitter at Packers_access. I'm joined alongside the great Mike Wahle, former NFL offensive lineman for your Green Bay Packers. Mike, appreciate your time, buddy. How you been doing?
Yeah, what's up, Clayton? I'm doing good, man. Good to be on.
Yeah, absolutely. Hopefully we can get a few answers here today. You know, we've been looking at the tape ourselves. We've been watching your videos. We've been watching other people's takes on everything that's kind of happened the last couple of games. And, you know, like I was saying offline, seems like everybody's consensus answer is, hey, fire Joe Barry and the problem's fixed. I think it goes a little deeper than that, although I would agree Barry's probably going to be done in Green Bay, I would imagine. You hate to see anybody lose their job, but, man, that last performance was rough. But before we get into it, Mike, I got a little something here for you. I want to take a walk down memory lane, if that's all right with you. We got some gritty tape right here, but this is hideous. I mean, if you can make out what we're actually looking at here, this is actually week 1 of the 2002 season. I think
we're playing the Falcons, right?
Yeah.
I remember this game.
Heck yeah. So this was your 4th year in the league. Am I thinking right?
Yep.
Cool. All right. So look right here, guys. Those of you watching on YouTube and on Twitter, I want you to key in right here. Nice little gasher on the left side. We'll go in slow motion. Look at our boy 68 on this play. You out there sealing the edge. I'm on a little counter. Is that a counter run? Is that what that was, Mike?
No, that was just like a belly. We used to run it's called 94 Ghost, and it was just a little belly play. And, you know, basically on the belly play, you're reading the running back's reading. I think on this one, he's reading 3 technique down to the shade. So he sees the hole, and I got my hat play side on the shade, but I'm starting to get him turned right there. You can see just past the line of scrimmage. So as soon as you get his shoulder pads turned to the sideline, easy cut for Amon to go backside out the gate.
Got you. Better late than never. You got it under control by the time he got there for sure. Love it. This next play, though, this one really cracked me up as we let this one finish out here. I need to ask you if Brett got a half a pancake for this next play. You may remember it. I don't know. And driver there at the end, my God, what a block. That was beautiful. But watch this right here. As you guys key in on our boy Mike here at left guard, all right? Brett's going to run out of time. At this point, I imagine you're going, Brett, throw the damn ball, Brett. But look at this. Mike, you got a little bit of help there, didn't you, man?
No, he actually screwed me over here. So Brett is, you know, kind of the Falcons were one of the first teams to run a 3-4, so they're running this 3-4 with that 5 technique coming down. So he does a good job. I set my hips right here, but he reaches over my shoulder. I remember this play really well, and grabs Brett's jersey with his right arm. And I felt Brett right there, and I just thought, like, drive. So I started running my feet and ended up putting him on his back and rolling over him. How Brett didn't go down right here, who knows, man? Just athletic play by him. But yeah. I would say that this is one of those that, like, you like the way it finished, and you know, I'm not too upset about it, but you never want the quarterback to get even touched. So
right. What I wanted to ask you about, Mike, was it kind of looks like you just go limp here and put every ounce of your weight on him right there. Is that true?
Yeah, I don't think too much about that stuff. But I was literally just running back then. It's like run your feet. And you got to remember, back in the day, like, we took a lot of pride in putting people on their backs.
Absolutely.
So I remember coming into this game, and we'd played them a year before. And I remember coming to this game, and they were like, hey, watch out, because they knew I was looking to put you over a pile whenever I could. And that's what we really wanted. I wanted those guys to be thinking about, you know, getting worried about me putting them on their backs more so than trying to get to Brett or trying to get to Amon.
Got it. Love it. And this play here, obviously you're pulling play side. So I imagine this is power. What would you call this play out of the I formation you're pulling across?
Yeah, so this is just a power play. This is just straight. This is straight 96 power. This isn't power load with JB in there. So this is just a power play. We kick out at the fullback on the outside linebacker. I lead up through. You can see the tight end gets turned a little bit, so I got to jump around the tight end's block here, and I end up getting on Keith Brooking here late.
Yeah.
And AG's out. Do a great job. It really, the guy who makes the play there, if you go back, is Javon Walker. Javon Walker does a good job cracking, and you just see the way that some safeties fit in. I think the safety does a good job of fitting in here with Javon, but Javon does a good job of running through the block here and really kind of makes this thing open up on the outside.
Oh wow, yeah, I didn't even notice that originally. Good stuff.
That's really the play of the day right there. As far as why this play works, it's really because of Javon.
Yeah, this was my play of the day right here at the very end, because you'll see 68 flash back onto the screen and absolutely annihilate the old man Marco Rivera right here. And I want to know what you said to him. Look at it looks like you get up and you smack him in the mouth right here, Mike. Look at you all fired up.
Yeah, man, we're just having a good time playing football.
Heck yeah, dude. I love to see it. Love to see it. And then, of course, here was finishing off a drive. I don't think you got in the end zone on this play. I think it was the very next play. But, again, just you guys, man, were a powerhouse. I think y'all rushed for over 200 yards in this game, if I remember correctly. But
yeah, this was, we ended up winning this game on one of the last-minute plays. I can't remember if it was quarterback sneak or Amon coming around on a 99G lead. But, this was really, if people don't remember this, but this is really Mike Vick's coming out party, man. He was doing some things in this game that nobody could believe.
I love it. And you'll see at the very end, if you guys will key in over here on this part of the screen, you're going to see a body go flying. And that's right. It was 68 that come through and gave him a little shove there, put him on his keister. God, I miss those days, man. I miss it. Sometimes, as football advances, Mike, it gets a little more, I don't want to say technical, obviously. I don't think that's the right way to say it. But
soft. It's soft. It's a softer game now. I'll put it to you this way. I was playing in Miami. I was actually telling somebody just reminded me of this story So they were introduced to me. I was going to do some skill development stuff. And I was working at the building, and I'd been there for a couple of years. But, I looked like this. I wasn't big anymore. And people were going like, okay, we know he played. He was pretty good, blah, 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 blah. And so one of my buddies one of the coaching staff, he pulled a film of I was playing in Green Bay like 2004, 2003, whatever. And I was playing like Jacksonville. Or it was Philly, sorry. And I had like 12 knockdowns that game. I mean, I'm putting people on there. It was Jeremiah Trotter and all those guys, and Dawkins, like studs, right? Corey Simon, all those guys. Darwin Ham, and I remember all the offensive linemen happened to be in this meeting. They were like, "Hey, just so you know, like who's talking next. This is how he used to play." And I remember the offensive linemen were like, they couldn't not only believe that was me, but they were more of like, "Oh, people actually did play like that. That wasn't some sort of like made up thing." When you guys actually say it was a really, really physical game, we finished through the floor and we finished through the whistle. You guys actually did that. Like it wasn't a joke. These days, kids don't see it the same way.
It's so true. It's so true. I just remember, and as I was watching that, it was about a 30-minute highlight reel, and I had a few minutes to kill. I'm like, let's watch every highlight from this game. There was multiple people leaving the field. It seemed like every drive. I mean, there were some hits. I know Driver had to leave at one point. I think Amon got his midsection banged up at one point. I mean, you guys were different. That's when I fell in love with the sport. There's no doubt about it. Still love it to this day, but just a different ball game back then, no doubt. Speaking of different ball game, the last time we spoke, it's been kind of an up and down season. And, here lately we got these last two games. The defenses look really, really bad, obviously. I feel very comfortable saying they've regressed. I don't think anyone would disagree with that. I know I watched your tape, your film breakdown, and you were kind of highlighting some of the miscommunications on the field. Other people were doing that as well. I know Dan Orlovsky broke down a video in which I went back and broke down the same video and just kind of looked at it going, why is Quay standing in the middle of the field with no one around? And not that we're here to bash players. That's not the point, obviously. But what do you think is the big problem? I know there's not just one answer, Mike. This fixes the issue. But what do you think? What's the first thing that comes to mind with this defense, how they played the last two games?
Well, I don't think it's the last two games. I don't think anything's changed during the entire season. What happens on defense is you can have really good individual performances that change the complexion of the game. And you watch like the Lions game, for example, and Goff threw the ball over the yard, but sometimes you throw the ball over the yard when you're going to when you're down a ton. So those are kind of throwaway numbers. You know what I mean? It's filling. It doesn't really mean anything. But when you watch that game, you watch how we were in the first quarter and how and they ran the ball, decently as far as they had some breakout runs. But we're playing on their side of the line of scrimmage for most of the first and second quarter. And it's like, why was that happening? Well, really, the defensive line took it upon themselves to beat their individual matchups. Like they were winning their 1v1 matchups. And when that happens, and then when you have Isaiah McDuffie in the run game, who's always trying to play on their side of the line of scrimmage anyways, like those things start to happen. And everybody, like you feed off that energy, right? So what I see with this team, and we continue to see week in, week out, is it's always the same thing. It's like you're catching a lot at the second level. Your run fits are very poor with safeties coming down. We missed a lot of tackles. And you can have some guys win individually up front, whether it's Preston, whether it's Rashawn, whether it's Kenny, whether it's TJ Slayton from time to time. But for whatever reason, it's like somebody has to make an outstanding play in order for the play to go well. It's not just like I have a tape from Carolina that I'm going to do tomorrow. And I just put on their clinic tape because their defense is actually really good. They just play for a bad team. And they're like the run fit, like we just showed with Javon and how he fit up on that wide receiver. I have the opposite of everybody's in their gap. The linebackers are attacking the line of scrimmage. Their safety comes down. I think it's Von Bell comes down and just same foot, same shoulders. The wide receiver's trying to crack him, fits into the hole and makes the tackle. Like it works exactly how it's supposed to work. Every gap's filled. We don't have that a lot in Green Bay, and that's the problem in the run game. And then Clayton, you talk about the passing game. It really all is. It's all about. It's all about the play calls that they make as far as, are we going to be satisfied to have a 6-yard cushion on a 3-yard, 3rd and 3, and then the communication on multiple levels, but it stood out a lot at the linebacker level, communications with linebackers and the safety, communication with linebacker and linebacker, but on really on every level, you have communication issues, and you just can't have that at this point in the season, regardless of who's on the field. Like this is a lot of the basics of football are being overlooked. Let's put it that way.
Got it. I mean, that's got to be how it's being taught, right? I mean, that's not just something that every player on that, I don't say every player, but the majority of the players on that defense are kind of showing that on tape. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's got to be, is it a culture thing? What do you think? What do you think it, because I know we've talked in the past, you've talked about like fundamentals, and you just, early in the season, you didn't see the fundamentals. It's like, what are we doing over there?
Yeah. And you still don't. I mean, is it being taught? Like that's such a difficult question, because I've been in rooms, I've been in with players where like the guy can't, if a guy can't consume, and this is nobody on the Green Bay Packers. Let's just have a hypothetical situation.
Got it.
If you have a player that can't consume more than 5 concepts, and you're trying to fill his brain with 15 concepts, it's not his fault. It's your fault. You're a bad coach because you have an identity. It's not you're failing because you're not doing what I want. It's I'm failing because I'm not giving you what you need to be successful. Conversely, if these are day one installs, because the thing that like Matt LaFleur had something in his press conference that really kind of hit my ear. And they were asking about Joe Barry, and he says, "Well, we're missing day one things."
Right.
And I went, okay, well, if you're missing day one things, that's on the players. Because if the players are missing tackles, if the players are not run fitting properly, if the players are having communication on like base defense, that's not a coaching thing anymore, because you're professional athletes. This isn't 5-year-old, junior All-American football. Right. If you're a professional athlete and you're missing calls and you're missing tackles and you're looking like a fool and your communication's problem, you might have a locker room problem because of the communication issue. Like, in other words, like linebackers and safeties aren't talking to one another. But if you're missing, like if you're making mental errors on base defense stuff and you're not making tackles and you're not fitting in the run game, that's on you, man. I mean, it's as simple as it can be. You get paid a ton of money to play a sport for a living. Like, put in some extra time. You never heard, like, I don't think Ray Lewis was the greatest linebacker ever, like most people do, but I think he was an amazing player. But the one thing you can't ever deny about Ray Lewis is Ray Lewis was never unprepared. And he talks about how much film he watched, and him and Ed would sit there and watch film after hours and hours. Lofa Tatupu was one of the guys that I played with in Seattle. He had a whole room dedicated to watch him. He'd just go home and watch film all day. I had a basement in Green Bay. I'd go home and watch film all day. So it's like, if you're not ready to go, if you don't know what you're supposed to be doing, in some instances, Matt LaFleur is right. Like, if it's day one install and you don't get it, man, that's on you. That's not anybody else.
Right. It's like that quad look. They came out with a quad right look. They motion over to the left. Typically, if you're playing a cover 3 or a quarters coverage, the principle is obviously you want to try to stay +1 unless you're playing catch man. So if you're looking to play +1 on the 3 side, you're looking to create a box. On the 2 side, you're looking to create a triangle. And I won't say the player specifically because that's not the goal here, is to call people out. But you see them sit in the middle of the field with no one within 8 yards of them, and I'm like, I have a hard time believing the defensive coordinator saying, hey, listen, I don't care what happens. You just sit right there in the middle of the field and don't react. That was like mind-blowing to me. And when you mentioned Ray Lewis, it's funny you said that because I said that very name the other day. I'm like, show me the tape where Ray Lewis is standing in the middle of the field and refusing to initiate any kind of contact, make a break on the ball, make a break on the play at all, knowing that on one side of the field you've got 3 receivers and not only did you have 3 receivers on that side of the field and only 2 guys to cover, you're sitting in the middle of the field and your eyes go to the inside slot on the opposite side where someone's playing inside technique, passing them to the safety. It's just, I don't know, man. It just seems, I want to say situational, but it's in almost every situation.
Yeah, that's systemic. That's systemic, not situational. And I think the play you're talking about, I believe that Devondre actually was yelling at Quay to come over to the middle because he was the mismatch, right? He was on Godwin.
That's actually a separate play, but that's another example of what we're talking about, though, the miscommunication and everything. Because if you bring up miscommunication, people immediately, and I say people, I shouldn't say it loosely, but a certain group of fans will go, there you go, covering for Joe Barry again, blaming it on the players. And it's like, no, it goes all the way to the top. Like it's his responsibility too to make sure they're communicating. I get that, but at some point, you gotta look at the players like you were just saying and be like, okay, what are we doing? What are we doing?
Okay, so I'll say it this way then. Because ultimately, it is the coach's responsibility, and we're not talking about anybody specific here. But let's just make a general statement: if you're a coach, and like man, I've been around some bad staffs with like bad leadership. I'm just telling you. But if you're a coach and your guys aren't getting the job done, and it's week 12, week 13, okay,
yeah.
And it's basic stuff, then you have to start asking questions. This doesn't, the Green Bay Packers don't have an owner. This isn't Jerry Jones saying like, you have to play that guy. Right. And I think there's probably some of that as far as I don't know how that works up there with Mark and Goody. I don't know, but there's obviously some people who have a longer leash than others because of where they were drafted or free agents or whatever. That's how the world works.
Right.
But if you're leading a room, if you're a position coach and your guys don't understand conceptually what's supposed to go on, if they're not able to communicate, if it's something that they're not improving on there, and it shows that it's demonstrated through their preparation that they're not trying to improve at the level that is required, then if you're playing them, then it all goes back right to you. So when I say it's like on the players for some of this stuff, it is at the individual level. Like you have to hold yourself personally accountable, but the coaches have to have the freedom to be like, oh, you're not doing the job. Then like I'll lose with the guy who's trying to do it right. Is not athletic enough, but I'm not going to lose with the guy who's got, was born with, all the athletic ability. Is not going to pay attention in meetings. So, and I don't know if that's the case at all. I'm just telling you conceptually, like I think the proper way to think about this, or at least one way to think about this, when you're dealing with things that are not focused around talent, but are focused around preparation.
Got it. That's one of the other big things that gets mentioned a lot is, how do you not have a top defense when you've got so many first round picks invested into this defense? I mean, just because someone's a first round pick doesn't make them a slam dunk dog of a player, right? I mean, not, and on top of that, you don't even have some of those players on the field because of injuries too. We kind of bypass that a bit. I guess what I'm trying to get at is, for everyone who's kind of got in their mind, we bring in a new DC, everything gets fixed just magically because we've already got all the great players here. Am I wrong for not buying into that? Am I missing something there?
I don't know that everything's fixed. I mean, certainly you can bring in another bad guy, right? Okay. Right. I mean, the thing about when Joe Barry got hired, I think more than a few people looked at his record. I think it was in Detroit, and you're like, well, what's he getting? What's this based on, right? Is he a great interviewer? Because the numbers weren't there, right?
Right.
So, and there's a lot of good young talent out there. There's a lot of old guys that can coach. I mean, it seems like there's high school coaches in the United States that are miles better than professional coaches, miles better at developing talent than professional coaches. They just didn't get their opportunities. That's one of my biggest messages to coaches when I do like a speaking engagement or something is like, don't think that because they had an opportunity that you weren't allowed that they're better than you. They just because it's not. The best coaches I've ever seen in my life. The two best practices I've ever been to in my life are both high school football coaches: Centennial Corona High School and Bellevue High School, and it's not even close. The attention to detail, the discipline, lack of the focus, everything. So I guess my point to you would be, I agree that you don't have that just because you're a first round pick doesn't. Jamal Reynolds was the 10th pick in the draft, as I recall. For the Green Bay Packers years ago. Right. And Lucas Van Ness is the 13th pick in the draft, and he could turn out to be a great player, but a 13th pick in the draft should be a starter for you right now, and he's not.
I agree.
When you look at the talent that they have, Quay Walker last year is a first round pick, but and he does a lot of good things well, but it's a really hard time taking up blocks. He could be an elite level athlete and not be an effective run defender in a run heavy NFC North because he can't take on blocks. That's a problem. So it's about how you value talent and what attributes you value when you bring them in. But regardless of, they're here now, right. And you have to. What has always been confusing with this team, and I think Matt LaFleur, to his credit, has done a really good job of putting people in situations to be successful on offense. But when you look at the culture of this team, for the last 3-4 years, if you're always having the same problems, then it's not an individual issue. It becomes an organizational issue, a culture issue. And then you have to start looking at, okay, what are our priorities as far as developing the athletes in this building? And are we doing a good job of that? I think all signs right now point to there's probably some work to be done.
Yeah, I agree. When you were talking just now about, okay, does he interview well, he being Barry, this and that, the first thing that came to mind for me was, well, we were focused on quarters coverage. We were focused on Fangio's scheme. And it goes right back to the conversation we had over a month ago when it was scheme. There's nothing that scheme can't fix. I know that just irked the hell out of you when that was said at the press conference, right? It just seems like that is the culture you've created. And I agree with what you're saying with Coach LaFleur on the offensive side of the ball, especially in the passing game. His scheme in the passing game is really impressive. I thought it's been really, really well. If Jordan had been a little more accurate early in the year, I think their offense would probably be in a little bit better shape, sooner. I like what they're doing on offense. I'm just trying to get my mind around, what kind of defensive mind do you bring in? Some people were saying that if the New York Giants staff gets canned, you could bring in Wink Martindale. On the surface, I like that hire. Wink's been around for a while. I don't think he'll get a head coaching offer. I could be wrong. Although some people were predicting there may be as many as 10 new head coaches in the league this year. That seems a little high, but according to averages, that's what they're projecting. If you got someone like Wink, I know, in Carolina, I know I'm going to screw the name up. Is it Ejiro? How do you say his name? Whatever. That's another one that keeps getting thrown around because you just said, they've got a great defense. They're just on a bad team, right?
I can't imagine he's going anywhere though. He's pretty good.
Keep him. Yeah. So if they do, obviously bringing a new head coach there in Carolina, he stays the DC. The only way that he'll get a job is if he gets promoted to or gets a head coaching offer too, right? So
assistant, so you get an assistant head coaching job, be the DC plus the assistant head coach. That would be the next step. Like the only other, I guess, like midpoint between that and a head coaching job. There's some good guys out there, but it's so based on our conversation, then you have to start going, okay, well, and I think, I don't know how involved Coach LaFleur is on the defensive side. Obviously, he has to sign off on everything they're doing at some level, right? Because it's his, he's culpable. So, based on what I'm talking about, based on what we've seen over the last couple of years, and we could talk about offensively or defensively. If you want to talk offense, this, if Jordan Love's footwork was better, they'd probably be a 10-win football team right now. It's just, it is what it is. And he's got he's gotten a lot better. And I'm not putting him down. I'm just telling you, if your footwork is better, you'd be a 10-win football team because your completion percentage would be much higher. And all these, good things happen when you throw the ball balls that people can catch. So all of this stuff stems from the same thing: tackling, fundamental footwork, the O line, and how they've taken a step back in a lot of ways. All of this stuff is in individual rooms might look like it's by itself, but when you in the totality of it, it's, organizationally, you have to look at what are we prioritizing? How do we prioritize developing these athletes? What are we doing during the day? How do we communicate? Like, culture is largely based on the actions that you take, but it's also about the transparency and the openness in which you communicate your intentions with the people around you, right? So if this stuff is convoluted in any way, if we're just putting signs up on the wall that say the standard is the standard, like everyone's favorite, the standard is the standard. Okay, great. So if you put that on the wall, it's like, oh, we're done with culture because I put it right there. Like the way the way that you address in detail, the way you simplify, difficult concepts into simple executable routines that people can upload, intake, and practice on their own. Like all of this stuff that you need to do to really be great. You have to just reset. I think at the end of the season, if you're the head coach, and go, am I doing this the right way? Am I doing this the way that, I might be doing it the way that Sean McVay did it. I might be doing it the way that Shanahan did. Is it work for me? Does it work for my personality and the way that I go about business? Am I addressing the defensive side the way it works for me? And I don't, I think those are always the really difficult situation or conversations, and they have to happen at that level, not necessarily just like, it doesn't matter who you bring in at DC. Right. If this communication or these level of expectations are not set and met.
Got it. The other thing too that comes to mind, you're talking about the players, you're a professional athlete, you've got to take ownership of it. You've got to take responsibility for it. I'm sure when you think back on the offensive lines you played on, as well as just the teams in general, you can probably think right off the bat of 1, 2, maybe 3 players that they held their teammates accountable. They were kind of the leader in the locker room. Like, hey, look, we are not okay with being mediocre, right? Like, am I wrong for feeling like from the outside looking in, obviously not being in the building, not being in the meeting rooms, not being in the practice, the grind, sweat, tears of training camp, all that. It just feels like that's lacking a little bit on the defensive side of the ball. Like, if someone were to ask me, that guy right there, that is your leader on defense, the first person that comes to mind is Rashawn Gary, just because he kind of leads by example. It seems that way anyway. But when you talk about the inside linebackers back to the secondary, we talked about trading Rasul Douglas. It was just like, that was mind-boggling to me. And it was kind of okay, we're going to punt for 2 years now and then focus on competing in 2025. That's got to send a message to the locker room too. And I know when we talked about it, Mike, with the whole Rasul thing, it was, this is probably going to hurt the locker room a bit. He's your emotional leader. He's arguably the best DB in your DB room, right, in the secondary. You could see him getting fiery on the field when people were miscommunicating, when they were blowing coverages, all those things. And now it just doesn't feel like you have that guy on this defense. They win a couple of games after the trade and people were, doing their victory laps. I thought this was going to destroy the culture. And now you see this stuff with Ja. We don't know the truth behind the scenes. You see the defense just kind of imploding here of lately. Do you think that Rasul trade has anything to do with it from a player's perspective? Do you think anyone in that locker room is looking up and going, yeah, what are we even doing here?
You can't speak factually here because I'm not in that locker room, but certainly all implications are that trading Rasul, you lost a leader in a place that really needs leadership. And we don't know to what extent that was true. We don't know how that was from a preparation standpoint, how he is on the practice field, how he is in the meeting rooms, how he is in the locker room. All those things matter. When I was drafted, you walked into that locker room and it was like, Brett was the 3-time MVP, but he's not. I don't know that he was the leader. Right. You had Chewy, you had Frankie, but you had Leroy Butler and you had Reggie and you had Santana and you had Gilbert and you had Nardo and that defense, and that was a top defense back in. That was the last year they were like ridiculous good, right? I think Reggie led the league in sacks. And I just remember going like, oh, they were so confident in themselves. So the way that they went about business, there was no tough guy stuff. There was no social media. Like, these guys are dealing with so much more than we ever had to deal with. Right. But it was just, self-policing was a real thing. And having high expectations and the way you talk to one another, it was just a real thing. You didn't have to be a tough guy because you're always prepared. You can just go out, have fun, kick ass, talk, smack with your friends and just have fun being really good. And nowadays, that's that as the individual brands continue to build on social media and all the other stuff that ancillary things that come along with being a pro athlete happen, that leadership is going to be less and less and less. As more cameras are allowed in the locker room, the less you're going to be able to experience that part of it, is my guess. But again, it doesn't mean that it's null and void anymore. It's probably more important than it ever was because of those things. And you have to have people that are willing to have uncomfortable conversations, pull you aside, and I can pull you aside and go, hey, look, it doesn't fly. If we're not practicing. And the thing the thing that I always look at, if I go to an NFL team and I just want to go watch practice, and I want to see how hard the offensive defensive line, the box players are playing against one another, because they're going to be physical. The DBs and one-on-one drills and everything, they can play hard, but they're not going to be physical for the most part. Some guys are. But I want to see how the box players are. And then this is what I miss. Mike Flanagan used to spend half the practice, and we all did, but Mike was like the leader of it. He would just sit and talk trash to the defensive line coach and linebackers coach. He would just talk to him the whole practice, and we would just keep going. I mean, every day, because every day it was a competition. And that part of football doesn't have to change just because you can't wear full pads every day, but it has changed. We've used it as an excuse to become a little bit you pick the word than what we used to be.
Yeah, definitely. It immediately made me think of a story that I heard about the New England Patriots there in the early 2000s when they got rid of Ty Law and they bring in Rodney Harrison. And they said it was like one of the first training camp practices. Rodney Harrison was in the building, and he caused a fight in practice immediately. And he was just jawing with Brady the entire time, and they were going back and forth, back and forth. And they said when the fight started, you could look over to the side and see Belichick just grinning, like he knew what was taking place. Yeah. They're raising each other's game, right? It's so important. Culture is it's the biggest thing that's overlooked. And it gets, like you said, it gets tossed around so much. Like you put a sign on the wall, slap it on the wall. All right, we got a culture. It's wild. Me being the out of shape older person that I am now from my couch saying y'all need culture. Anyway.
Well, it's the hard part about, like, the fun part about sports. I think from a fan's perspective, like you got to remember, like, I've never really experienced football as a fan. I've just always played, and I was an ex-player. So when I look at things, I look at film, and I just want to know how to beat people. I want to understand how to break you down. I want to understand how to build a team. But fans are emotional. Like, they don't, a lot of fans don't care about that. They don't care. They don't know. They don't want to know why you didn't throw the touchdown. They just mad. They just want to be able to say, great, we threw it, or bad, we didn't. And it makes the game go. And, I can empathize with that, but this is such a complex organism. Like, a team is such a complex organism, and there's so many things that go into it. And there's so many things that like the differentiators in success. It might be something you're not even thinking about. It might be something you pick up on tape. It might be a shoulder shrug. It might be body language. It might be something to, clap back at a specific coach. But all that stuff matters, right? Or I should say, all that stuff could actually matter. Or the way the teammates to address each other on the sidelines, like, all that stuff matters. And so when you're in a position of leadership, what you're always trying to do is you're trying to get like 53 of the baddest dudes that feel like they've earned the right to be the baddest versions of themselves, like the biggest, baddest dudes they could possibly be, because they've earned it. And then everything else kind of falls in place. Like, you never see a team that just got a bunch of dudes who are like, we all grind as hard as we can to be the best we can, and they're not a bunch of badass dudes, man. They're not a great team. You never see that. And we try to find these shortcuts with everything else, but and I'm oversimplifying it. But for me, it's always like, it's such an easy, it's not easy, but it's simple. It's such a simple answer. Go out, prepare everybody else in every facet that you can. Control everything you can control. Don't worry about anything else. Drown out the noise. Success brings fame. Success brings money. Success brings contracts. Success brings ancillary things. Don't worry about any of that. Just go focus on being the best version of you, and life tends to work out.
Yeah. Yeah, it's good stuff. Let's shift gears to the offensive line. I always like to get there ain't no way you're coming on this pod and I'm not going to ask you about the offensive line. It's just not going to happen. I know we had a conversation about Rasheed Walker earlier in the year. Correct me if I'm wrong, but if I remember that conversation correctly, you liked his feet. You said he had good footwork. I remember you initially saying that, if I remember correctly. Not just Rasheed, but this offensive line as a whole. How would you grade them? Not with necessarily a letter grade, but just left to right with your starting offensive line. How do we feel about this offensive line moving forward? Because obviously, I think we would all agree Bakhtiari's future is very much so up in the air. It's going to depend on the knee. It's going to depend on contractual things, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
How do you feel about this offensive line on the surface, Mike?
If I thought that next season, like if I look at the offense and I see what the receivers are capable of, and I see what Jaden Reed's brought and Dontavian Wicks has brought to the offense, and I can close my eyes and see if Christian Watson can ever stay healthy, what he might look like, and Romeo Dobbs, what he adds, and if I can close my eyes and see what Luke Musgrave will look like next season, and how Tucker Kraft's evolved this year and what he's becoming a big part, and can we find a running mate with Aaron Jones that can average 4 yards a carry, whether it's AJ or somebody else? I start looking around at that offense and what they're capable of. Jordan Love takes another bite out of the apple next year and becomes a more complete player with his footwork and pre-snap recognition. I would say 74 and 50, man, you're going to be here for a long time. I'm going to tie you up right now. And everybody else is on the table.
Got it. That makes sense. Makes complete sense.
Now, if you like Sean Ryan or you like John Rennie Jr., I don't care. Like, you can pick one. It doesn't matter to me. Like, right. I get the conversation. I think it's fun. Rasheed Walker, Josh Nijman, fine. You want to go find the number one thing is either, and Josh Myers has played better, but you either go find an absolute unit at center, a guy who like a LaCharles Bentley, arrogant, stronger than you, better than you, loud, makes calls, finishes through the whistle. You go find that guy to lead that team because they need a leader. Or you go find the most talented pass protecting, run blocking left tackle you can find, and you just open the vault and you just pay one of those guys. That's me.
Got it. Makes sense. So reading between the lines there, or really you just said it. Two guys, Zach Tom, Elton Jenkins. That's who you're building this offensive line around, right? That's got it. Good stuff. Something else I was going to ask you. Oh, yeah. With kind of the state of the team, this will be the final question. I want to respect your time. I really appreciate you jumping on with us. When you look at kind of the state of this team right now, they got a slight chance, a very, very slight chance of making the playoffs, obviously. When Ray Rhodes took over in Green Bay, if I remember correctly, you were in your second year, I think. Is that right?
Yep.
So, obviously, you bring in Mike Sherman, and things kind of immediately shift. Did you notice? I mean, because I think the next year, y'all went 10 wins, I believe, if I remember correctly, 10 or 12 wins. Anyway, you went
10, probably 10.
Yeah, I think you went 10, 10, and then 12, and then 10 again, I believe, if I remember correctly. So, anyway, when it comes to kind of where the team's at right now, and it looks like things are starting to kind of cut the corner on the uptick as far as the offensive side of the ball. If the defense, if we can get that straightened out, what do you think would be the biggest step in the right direction? What is the key element to doing what you guys did, coming off of that down year and going, okay, we really took a step back. Now we're going to hit this thing running. I mean, what did Mike Sherman do? What did Coach Sherman do when he came in that just changed things as opposed to? I know Ray Rhodes was kind of put in a tough situation. I think we would all agree with that.
Yeah, but, I thought Ray. Ray got screwed up. Ray was put in a tough situation, and I remember very specifically. I don't want to name names because I can't remember exactly who it was, but somebody got in trouble with like a driving incident or something, and there's like something later on in the year, and we're kind of going like, well, that's it. It's just guys are getting a little bit out of control, and Ray was a guy that let people. He was going to let adults be adults, right? And that doesn't always work,
right?
For in every aspect. Oh, hey, you're grown men. I'm gonna let you be grown men, and everybody loves that, right? Everybody loves that until it's not. You're not winning. It's like, oh, maybe I need a little bit more like discipline. Maybe you need to build a little house around me and tell me what to do. A little, I need a better routine. I need people to help me do this. And so what Mike did was Mike is like a lawyer. Like, you ever talk to Mike, like, you really got to watch what you say, because Michael he'll take a sentence and like pick you apart. So he's like got a lawyer mentality. And so with Mike, he had a very clear vision of what he wanted to do. He'd been with Holmgren for years and years. He was coming from Seattle after he had been gone for that one season. And he has a great offensive line. He was an offensive line coach in college. He was Mike Flanagan's coach at UCLA. So he has a very clear understanding of how we're going to build out. You have an MVP quarterback. But we're really going to build this out around that offensive line, our running back, our running game, and that was football back then. And so that's what he had a very clear understanding of how that was going to work and what was going to be allowed and what wasn't going to be allowed. I think the biggest thing with Mike is there was a level of routine check and discipline that was not there the year prior, and you felt it immediately as far as how expectations were set. Again, transparent, clear, concise communication with your athletes on what the standard was, what was expected, and how we were going to carry it out. There wasn't any like magic post or anything, but I think you get rid of a couple of people in the locker room, you bring some different people in, and you have that message, and I think it makes a big difference. So when you're talking about Clayton, like what's the difference between next year and this year? You're not going to get like Matt LaFleur is not being replaced, but he's probably going to replace a big part of his defensive unit. I'm guessing.
Right.
But I think what Matt has to do, if I'm sitting in Matt LaFleur's, if I'm his counsel, I'm like, right after the season, I'm going to kick everybody in this building out of your room, including myself, everybody out of the room, because everybody has a vested interest in making sure that you understand what's right in the context of how it benefits them. And I'm going to go find whoever my trusted confidant is. So if I have a mentor, is it my wife? Who is it? But we're going to sit down and we're going to break down the way that I've been communicating with my coaching staff and the demands that I've been put on my coaching staff on how they're handling these players. Because the thing that keeps popping up to me is is a lack of technical mastery. And now we're getting into communication, run fit, basic fundamental, be the best at the basics idea. We're not there, and we haven't been there for years. And Brett glossed over a lot, or painted over a lot of it. Not Brett, Aaron painted over a lot of it. But we don't have that, and we need to be the best at the basics of the sport. And what am I doing, not only with the players, but with my coaching staff? How am I setting that standard and level of detail with my staff and communicating with them the expectations of execution and preparation on a daily basis so that we can empower them to really develop these highly trained athletes?
Got it. The two words that are popping in my mind as you were explaining all that: vision and structure. Where are we going? What are we doing? What's the plan, and how are we getting there? Right. And one of the things that I think a lot of people overlook, you go all the way back to the old days of Bill Parcells. He had a personal coach. He had a mentor that he leaned on. I don't think anybody Bill Belichick had a couple in his life while he was in New England, right? One was his dad before he passed away, obviously. Yep. And then, of course, he had Ernie Adams right there alongside, with him, kind of bouncing ideas off of. I don't know who that guy is for Matt, and maybe there is someone, and he ain't going to, obviously come to us and go, hey, guys, here's my person, here's my coach. But you got to have that mentor. There's no doubt about it. Mike, we're glad you're our coach, buddy. We can't thank you enough for the footage you put out, man, and breaking down the tape. Every time you go live, I'm listening. I know the listeners absolutely love it when you come on the show. We can't thank you enough for taking the time to do it. Keep doing what you're doing, man. You could be doing anything in the world, and you're choosing to take time to help knuckleheads like me learn the sport at a little bit different level. I don't take it lightly, man. I really don't. I appreciate you.
You got it, man. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, absolutely. Make sure y'all follow him at MikeWall68 on Twitter. Check his YouTube channel out, Process to Perform, doing great stuff over there. Absolutely awesome. We're going to get out of here, guys. Appreciate y'all making us a part of your day. As always, let's go out and be the change we want to see in the world. And go Pack.
The power sweep. Actually, it's the lead play in our offense.
Yes, a YN or a tight end to open up somewhere between 6 feet and 9 feet. Get an isolation with the linebacker. Tell the tackle to take the defensive end if he's over him. If he's not, to drive down on the first man to his inside. If the YN has the linebacker taken out, he cuts inside. If the YN has the linebacker in, he comes all the way around. If you look at this play, what we're trying to get is a seal here and a seal here, and try to run this play in the alley.